a lot of people have been asking me, what am I going to do? Am I going to stand? Am I not going to stand? Am I going to go back for the Thanet South constituency? What am I going to do? And I have to say, today, I was plunged into even deeper difficulty in terms of my thought process when I heard that Clacton-on-Sea is now a Douglas Carswell-free zone, which I think in terms of political honesty is a very good thing. Clacton is demographically UKIP's best seat in the country. And I thought, well, do you know what? I could stand in Thanet South. It's tough, but I still think I'd win, given an even playing field. If I stood in Clacton, it'd be easier. But then I thought to myself, why am I in politics? Why did I leave quite a good job, running my own company, working in the metals trading industry? Why did I get involved in this rat's nest that is called politics? And I did it because I always had a very strong conviction. I always believed that the direction of this country was wrong in terms of being part of European political union. So I stood in elections, I stood in by-elections, I stood in European elections, I nearly stood in the 90s in as many elections as Screaming Lord Sutch, the late Screaming Lord Sutch of the monster raving loony party. But I did it out of absolute total conviction, never wanting to be a career politician. Well, things moved on and we won the European elections of 2014. We forced Cameron to concede a referendum and we won it. And we've won the war. The question is, how do we win the peace, which is equally important? And how can I play my role helping Brexit to happen? So I've been weighing up for the last couple of days, what best do I do? Would it be right to fight and win a constituency and to sit on the back benches in Westminster? Or do I think about the fact that I already have a position as leader of a group in the European Parliament? I'm the only one out of 508 million people sitting on that front bench who is opposed to the whole concept of European Union, where not only can I get up and make speeches and criticise either what they're doing or indeed what the British government is doing in the negotiations that will take place there over the course of the next 2 years, but I've also got a big profile on the big stage with media, European media, across all 28 member states. And given that it's the European Parliament, not the British Parliament, but the European Parliament that ultimately, at the end of this 2-year process, will have the absolute right of veto, I thought to myself, sitting as a backbench MP, being called by John Bercow twice a year for PMQs, or having a chance once or twice every month to be on the front row, to be up close and personal with Jean-Claude Juncker, Donald Tusk and all the rest of them. In terms of a stage, there's no comparison. And in terms of Brexit, what I want to do is I want to make sure that in February, March 2019, as the Brexit deadline approaches and as the European Parliament gets its final vote, I want to make sure those MEPs, have the maximum pressure exerted upon them by their own constituents. And I'm talking about German car manufacturers. I'm talking about French wine producers. I'm talking about Belgian chocolate makers, people who sell so much more to Britain than we sell to them. They actually call us Treasure Island. We are their best export market in the world. And I believe that by using my, well, some may say fame, others may say notoriety, it doesn't really matter, but I've got a chance to travel around those big European cities and to say to people, don't vote, don't support MEPs who are standing for re-election, who will block Britain having a sensible free trade deal exit, because if you do that, you'll cost people jobs in those constituencies far more than you'll ever hurt people in the UK. So for all of those reasons, I've decided I will not stand in this general election, but I will stand absolutely foursquare behind Paul Nuttall, behind UKIP. And I think it's very interesting, the last couple of nights, callers saying, I've got to vote for Theresa May because, you know, thing is, if she doesn't win, there's going to be this progressive alliance of Labour, the Lib Dems and the SNP who will form the government and reverse Brexit. I have a feeling that over the course of the next few weeks, you're going to see the Tory poll lead so huge that actually the idea that anyone can win, other than the Conservatives, will be out of the window. And I think in that situation, a lot of voters will come home to UKIP. That's my view. I am happy to take any calls, any comments on what I've done. You may think I've done the right thing. you may think I've done the wrong thing. But let me know. Call me on 0345 60 60 973. You can text at 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and you can watch us live on LBC's Facebook page. Now, that's me, but more important than me is Jeremy Corbyn, who today launched the Labour manifesto. It was a very strong anti-establishment message. It was, I am on your side. I'm against the big battalions who have really carved up the economy and this country for their own benefit, and I'm with you. It was, I suppose, perhaps the most left-wing manifesto that has been seen since Michael Foot back in 1983. But he was talking about fairness. He was talking about being on the side of ordinary people against the rich, against the wealthy, against the big businesses. And I know from this programme that there are many of you out there that think the man is very genuine and very sincere in what he says. But there is, I think, a little bit of a problem. One, and you may think this is ridiculous, but last night I sort of half joked. I said, the trouble with Corbyn is he can't actually do his tie up straight. Did you see him today? Did you see him at the launch? The tie was sort of round here somewhere. I mean, it looked to me to be a shambles. Perhaps I'm old-fashioned. Perhaps I'm completely out of date. But that's how it looked to me. But the bigger problem is that on Brexit, on the attitudes towards Brexit, which without any shadow of a doubt is the dominant issue in this general election campaign, he was, frankly, all over the place. He said in his speech, he point-blank refused to rule out asking for a second referendum on the ultimate Brexit deal. And then later in the day, John McDonnell said that the government should put the deal to Parliament and possibly to the country overall. So it looked like at lunchtime the Labour Party were backing a second referendum, and yet within a few hours it was perfectly clear that they were ruling out backing a second referendum. And I think that on the biggest issue that faces voters in this general election, what this launch today has shown is that, frankly, the Labour Party is a shambles. And I said last night, can anyone please ring in and tell me what Labour's policy is on Brexit? And after today's launch, I'm even more confused. Anyone out there that knows where Labour really stands on this key issue in this election, call me. So the question I'm asking you is, do you believe that Labour is a credible threat in this general election? Call me 0345 60 60 973, text 84850, tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. I'm going to go to Paul in Deal in Kent. Deal, of course, a constituency, Paul, that has been Labour, has been Tory, has been Labour, a real marginal.
Absolutely. But one thing I've got to say straight away, Nigel. First of all, nice to speak to you. But secondly, I hear the passion and the enthusiasm in your voice, and I think you're wrong by not standing. We need you. You're the only one that's got the balls to stand up to the establishment and make sure this happens. And I think you should stand and make sure that this carries on through. And second, because you need to help me. You need to help me and the many others like me who are going to be on the fence. I used to support Labour, but now they've got that weasel of a scarecrow running it. I can't stand it, so I'm out of it. I'm not a Tory, and I voted UKIP last time.
Right.
So now what do? You know, I think UKIP hasn't got much running ground anymore without you being in there. Labour, I can't stand. The others, the Lib Dems and the Greens, who the hell are they? And well, the Conservatives are going to win it, but I don't agree with their manifesto, and I'm not alone.
No, Paul, I know you're not.
So I can support you.
Yeah, but Paul, as I said a moment ago, you know, I got into politics not for a career. I left a career to come into this malarkey, and I have to think to myself, how best can I serve Brexit? We won the war, we have to win the peace, and I genuinely think I can do that better leading a group of 45 MEPs in the European Parliament where the negotiations will take place and where ultimately they could veto 2 years of hard work. That, Paul, is why I've made this decision. But I do get that you will not be alone in being disappointed or criticising me for not doing this. But I've done it because I genuinely think I can do more for Brexit leading a group in the European Parliament than I can as a backbench MP who probably would get pretty ignored, Paul.
But I'm getting to the feeling now, personally, after listening to the news and reading bits of paper, I think, and I'm 49, I'm a grown-up man, I'm going to have to vote Tory purely to give my country the support it needs. Not because I agree with its mandate or its policies or I agree with the Conservatives, because I don't. But I feel now I have to vote for them to give Theresa May the backing that she needs to be strong and powerful to get Brexit through. Because I don't care what anybody says. This election is all about Brexit.
Oh, Paul, listen, I agree with that, mate. Absolutely. I mean, I would say this to you. If you're a strong Brexiteer, you've got two choices, haven't you? Because you can't vote Labour because they haven't got a policy. You can't vote Lib Dem because they're pro-Remain and second referendums. And you've either got to vote for the Conservatives, trusting Theresa May, or you've got to vote UKIP, thinking that actually the Tories need to be held to account. And I simply can't see what else as a Brexiteer you can do. But it's an unusual election, Paul. It's a weird election. The only thing I'm completely confident of is the Conservatives are going to win this election with an absolutely massive majority. But, you know, I mean, if anybody out there who's a Brexit voter thinks I'm wrong and thinks they're going to vote for somebody else, let me know. Paul, in delightful Deal in Kent, where I was last Friday, thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm going to go to Sigra in Nottingham. Good evening.
Good evening, but it's Syra.
Syra, I apologise. Now tell me, do you think Labour pose a credible threat in this election campaign given their launch today?
Absolutely. There's no reason why Labour will not win, because half of the Conservatives, they're under investigation for fraud anyway. So, however, if there was going to be a possibility for Conservatives to win, that is certainly not going to happen.
Well, look, Sarah, it isn't half of them, and I made this point on Tuesday on this show that perhaps up to 20 MPs and constituencies are under investigation, and the Crown Prosecution Service have said that up to 30 people, including 20 MPs, may well, they may not, but they may well face prosecution. So it isn't half of them, and in a way, I think what Theresa May has done by calling this election, partly because she feared a slew of by-elections, but also she wanted to draw a line under the old Conservative Party run by Cameron Osborne to say we're now running a clean campaign. I don't think that's going to hurt them here, do you?
I completely disagree. I believe the reason why she's called for a slap election is because she knows she's going to lose. One, there's no way she's going to get a good deal. Nobody actually likes her in the EU. She will never be able to get a good deal for us. Secondly, I'm sure she's part of the investigation. Well, if she certainly isn't now, she definitely will be, because I'm positive she's got her hand in it. But regardless of that, what I found comical, and the reason I'm actually ringing up, is that you've actually put a statement on there saying that I've decided not to take part in the general election. My question to you is, why would we vote for you even? What you did during Brexit, the lies, the 350 million, we're still waiting on that.
Well, but hang on, I never mentioned that.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Times you did.
Never,
yes,
not once.
You deny it.
No, do you know what? I do deny it. I never mentioned it once. Don't put words into my mouth that are false.
There were posters by your party.
There weren't.
Absolutely everywhere. There were posters of refugees from Middle East, which had nothing to do with Brexit. You used a horrid, nasty campaign that you led. You're talking about we won the war, let's win the peace.
Yeah.
With the stuff that you've done, do you really think that you can sit there and dictate?
You do sound like a very, very sore loser, and I'm very happy. I'm very happy for any of you.
What have I lost?
Any of you can. You seem very upset.
I haven't actually lost anything. I'm upset. I'm upset the fact that people like you are given a platform.
I know. Isn't it dreadful? Can you imagine someone like me? Can you really imagine that someone like me, who led a party in 2014 to winning a national election, something that had not been done since 1906 by either the Labour or the Conservative parties, should have a platform? Can you believe it? Isn't it ghastly? And, you know, I'm happy for anyone to ring up and disagree, but please, please get your facts right, because I'm afraid that one wasn't correct. Right now, you're listening to... Today was the Labour launch, and there was Jeremy Corbyn, and he was full of strong anti-establishment stuff. I am on your side against the rich, against the big. And, you know, you can call it the most left-wing manifesto since 1983. What you couldn't doubt is the sincerity of what he was saying. And then it came to Brexit and it all fell to pieces, because he left the impression that Labour would support perhaps having a second referendum. And then the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, backed it up by saying, we will put a deal to Parliament and possibly to the country overall. And then within 3 hours, they've done a 180-degree U-turn, and it all looks like a complete and total and utter shambles. And I have a text here that says, Nigel, I know you fancy yourself as a politician, but commenting on someone's tie is a bit pathetic. I want to say hats off to the last caller. Believe me, if you stand in front of the country with a tie over, sort of over to the left somewhere and down from the top button, all you do is distract people away from the message you're giving. It looks ridiculous. Best, actually, whether you're wearing expensive clothes or cheap ones, to look smart and to be on parade. That's my view. Perhaps you think I'm ridiculously old-fashioned, but I generally think that is what people feel. Your texts and tweets coming in, some of them about Corbyn, one or two commenting on my own decision not to run in this election because I feel I can do more for the Brexit process leading a group in Strasbourg in the European Parliament through the next 2 years. Daniel Bagley says on Twitter, Farage has made the right decision. He can do more from Strasbourg. The Brexit campaign damaged your brand, so I guessed this is a decision based on pragmatism, tweets John Bell. Well, I don't know whether it damaged Brian Brown. We did actually win. And I had this huge criticism earlier. Syra, who was ringing in before the news, wouldn't listen. She wouldn't listen. I mean, any of you, please ring up and within reason be as rude to me as you want, but get your facts right. Mark in Wakefield says UKIP never said anything about £350 million a week. That was Boris Johnson. And Syra in Nottingham, I please hope you're listening. I know you hate me, but please don't pin that round my neck. Some agree with Syra. Great caller. Agree with her completely. Did you ask for the claim on the campaign? Did you ask for it to be changed on the campaign bus? It wasn't my campaign bus. Mine was a big open double-decker, and it said, we want our country back. And some people thought that was going over the top. I didn't. I think it helped us to win. I wonder what Birkin in Sidcup makes of today's general election politics. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm happy.
Good, so am I. But just to answer your question, I think Jeremy Corbyn is the biggest threat. I think he will win.
Do
personally.
you?
Yes, I listened to him today. I really did. And today I joined the Labour Party because of him.
Okay.
I think the points he hit about the top 1%, about the economy and the system being rigged, and these are points that have never been addressed by establishment MPs. Yesterday, I had to listen to Theresa May give a speech about equality from a helicopter.
Right.
You know, and I've heard all of this before from Theresa May, and I've seen her. I've studied her through PMQs. She always responds, but she doesn't answer. And this man is right now. They kept saying to me, he's a spineless leader. He's a leader who doesn't, he ain't got no backbone and whatnot. I mean, this woman, she can't even turn up to a TV debate.
Oh, no, listen, Birkin, I agree. I agree with that criticism. And by the way, I mean, be fair to me, I've said tonight and last night that there is, I think, a sincerity that many people see in Jeremy Corbyn. And I did make the point, Birkin, that there were parts of his speech today with a strong anti-establishment message that I do think will resonate with people, and you're one of them. But, Birkin, I'm going to come back to this and put this back to you. On the biggest issue upon which this election is being fought, namely Brexit, I'm left, after his comments, McDonnell's comments, and then their retractions, even more confused than I was this morning as to where the Labour Party stands on Brexit.
Okay, I'm glad you asked me that, and I'm going to give you a good answer now.
Okay, I'm waiting.
Okay, so I voted for Brexit.
Uh-huh.
I voted for Brexit, and I'm a socialist. It's a socialist movement as well as a right-wing movement, and I voted for Brexit.
Yep.
But one thing I didn't vote for is a Tory Brexit. I voted for a Brexit to say goodbye to the 1%. the 1% bought the EU way before they bought this country. They bought this country way before they bought the EU. And Brexit, for me, was the first step. Now, what I think Labour has to do is, first things first, is stay in the single market, get our human rights done, fix the NHS, fix the schools, fix everything that needs to be fixed, and when the next election comes, then push for the hard Brexit. This has to be tactical. We can't just push.
Right. So you see Brexit as a two-stage process, yeah?
More than a two-stage. I think it's going to take around 7 years.
Right,
7 to 10 years.
but ultimately, Birkin, you voted for us to be a free, independent, self-governing democratic nation, the kind of socialist ideas that Tony Benn pushed for 40 years, yeah?
Yes.
Right, let me ask you one last question, because I'm enjoying this far too much to let you go. How could you then support somebody who, for 33 years in Parliament, idolised Tony Benn, supported him all the way on every single battle against European treaties, against contributions to the European Union, and then when he becomes Labour Party leader, supports Remain? How can you respect that?
I'm even glad you asked me that, and I've got an answer to that as well, Nigel.
After the show, we must meet for a beer, Burkham. Go on, please.
We have to. Because I live near Westminster. Let's meet for a beer.
I'd love to.
Okay, Nigel, let me answer that question.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, he is an anti-establishment politician.
Yep.
This man, everyone is against him. There is people against him in his own party. That's how we had this illusion of a two choice.
So why did he back Goldman Sachs? Why did he back Tony Blair? Why did he back all the multinational companies? Why did he back Jean-Claude Juncker? Why did this anti-establishment figure in the biggest constitutional debate we've ever had and will have, Burkhan, in our lifetimes, why did he back the establishment?
To be able to stay where he was.
That's not good enough.
Wait, Nigel.
Oh, no, come on, old son.
Speak, Nigel, let me speak.
I haven't stopped you so far, have I?
Can I answer this, Nigel?
Yeah,
please?
go on.
Okay, the party was against him. He had to stay in power, but he didn't protest. He didn't go like, yes, let's stay in here. Let's stay. He done it to make his backbenchers happy. He was afraid of his backbenchers, and he needed to stay in power. Okay,
right.
He did not go as far out. But now look at him now. I guarantee you, this man, he has been anti-EU his whole life. We are out.
No. Now listen,
Nigel, let's meet for that beer.
I'll meet for the beer. Burkett, you are a complete and total star for 90% of this conversation, and then you let me down like a cheap pair of braces by telling me he's a great man because he did what his backbenchers wanted him to do. And Burkett, leadership is about leading. Leadership is about doing things sometimes that may not be popular in the short term, but are right in the medium and long term. But we will meet for that beer, and I thank you. On Facebook, Jamie says, I'm a UKIP person who's also now voting Tory. We had a few of those last night. Joy says, you've made the right decision, Nigel. I don't trust the PM to deliver a hard Brexit. Well, I'm going to do my best, Joy, in Brussels to, literally be a lightning rod and to tell you what's going on. Because I was appalled the other week. I was at a big European summit of leaders, and I picked up in the corridors that the Foreign Office, the Brexit negotiating team, were basically saying we're happy to concede the idea of taking back our fisheries if we can get a better trade deal. I've written about this in the Daily Telegraph. It's online. You can watch it after this show. Leslie says, I'd love to see the look on Juncker and others' faces knowing that you will be there at the heart of Europe. And Michael says, how does it feel to be partly responsible for the dismantling of the fabric of this great country you swear you hold so dear? Well, Michael, you can take whatever view you like. You can take any election to be a disaster if you don't like the result. But we got the one we got, and we are leaving the European Union, Michael. Get with it. If it's too much, just pour yourself another drink. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show. Jeremy Corbyn today launched the Labour Party's big bid for the general election on June the 8th, and many of you admire his strong stance against the rich, against the 1% who own far too much, against the power of big businesses, against the fact that ordinary folk don't get an even break. Big, strong, anti-establishment, hard left-wing stuff that has won, I think, the support of many, but when it came to Brexit, oh dear, 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 it was a complete and utter shambles, and we end the day, I think, more confused as to where Her Majesty's loyal opposition stand on this great issue that we did at the start of the day. And I'm asking you, are the Labour Party a serious, credible threat to the Conservatives in this general election? I frankly don't see, after today's launch, how they can be. Also, I've announced tonight I will not be standing in this general election, believing I can help the Brexit cause better, given my front row seat in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, overseeing these Brexit negotiations and the final vote, where the European Parliament may have a veto. So I'm taking calls, texts, tweets, Facebook messages on all of those things. And on text I get, totally understand your decision not to stand at the election, but hope in 2019 after Brexit you will stand for UKIP at the earliest by-election. We will need you in Parliament, says Jan from Bromley. You're very sweet, but there are 2 torrid years to go before I'll even think about that. And Steve on Twitter says, don't you think a large majority would be bad for the country? Well, one of the criticisms of Mrs Thatcher was that when she got a majority of 144 in 1983, frankly, it was too big, and she wasn't being held to account for things that were done in Parliament. Whether you agree with that or disagree with that, going back to the 80s, the prospect of Mrs May having a majority, according to some of the experts, of 140 or 150 seats, means they are really completely going to be in power and without anyone holding them to account, which is why I say that I think in the last couple of weeks you will see smaller parties start to do better in the polls as people feel freer to vote for parties they really support, knowing that the outcome is going to be a Tory win anyway. Why do you say that General Election 17 is all about Brexit? Didn't we already have that referendum? NHS, education, etc., also important, says Andrew. Says, yeah, they are all very important, but don't delude yourself. Brexit will dominate this debate over the course of the next 6 weeks. Nigel, Corbyn can say what he likes. His MPs don't respect him. His policy of no second referendum means nothing when the leader is not in control, says Steve in Winchester. And what I love here, David in Northern Ireland says, glad you're staying in the European Parliament, Nigel. We need you there to make sure the European gangsters keep the violin cases under the table. David, I don't recommend you visit Brussels anytime soon. You'd be even less popular than I am. But I'm going to ask Pat from Howson Regis. Pat, how do you feel? How do you feel? Either about my decision not to stand or about Corbyn being a credible threat?
Evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
I feel you've made a very poor decision.
Yep.
I'm very disappointed as a UKIP member and a supporter.
Yep.
I also think whereas you've strengthened UKIP, to a certain extent, we had 6 million votes in the last election. The vast majority of those votes will just swave over to the Tories, and I think then you'll be responsible for the demise of UKIP.
Oh, thank you.
It will just fold. It will just fold. Because
well, let's get the facts right, Pat, first.
Well, can I just finish? If you were standing in Clacton, you will bolster that support all over the country. They know you're there. They know you're going to do well. And it will bolster the support for UKIP. UKIP will be around, and we need UKIP. If UKIP go, then who's going to look after the indigenous population, which is in the majority? That no one's talking about immigration either. None of the parties are talking about immigration. We're back to square one, regardless of Brexit.
Pat, let me just get some facts right here. UKIP got 4.5 million votes in the European elections of 14, and it got 3.9 million votes in the general election of 15.
Okay.
Interestingly, nearly half of the voters in 14 switched to the Tories, mostly through fear of the SNP. So between 2014 and 15, 6 million people did vote UKIP. So you're right, but I just wanted to get some sort of context on that.
Yeah.
Pat, you know, I've spent a quarter of a century helping to build this party. I had a big lunchtime meeting with Paul Nuttall yesterday. I've been on the phone with him today. I intend to help him and support him in any way I can over the course of the next 6.5 weeks. But I do have, Pat, on a UKIP ticket, a very responsible job in the European Parliament, leading not just UKIP MEPs, but other Eurosceptic MEPs from across the rest of Europe. And in terms of, and I get your point, short term, some will say, well, if Nigel was standing, it might help all of us. But actually, I'm not going away, Pat. I'm going to be around. I'm going to be appearing on shows. I'm going to be travelling around. But, Pat, in terms of Brexit, in terms of the process, I feel I can do more in the European Parliament than I could as a backbench MP.
Well, I still think you're wrong, and
Okay.
I hope UKIP do not fold after the election. But I think if there's a poor showing, a really poor showing, that will see the end of UKIP. And we need a party that we can trust to support us. The Brexiteers are the ones that didn't want immigration. That was mainly on it. And
I get all of that.
About that anymore, are they? They're not talking about it.
I get all of that, Pat, and UKIP has a very important role in British politics. It's far from finished. I agree with that point wholly. Robert in Watford, are Labour going to provide a credible opposition campaign to Theresa May?
I'd like to say yes. I mean, they've got some good ideas, but I think with him as a leader, I don't think they stand a chance. Like I said, if you had either of the Miller bands or a Chuck or a Mooner, I think they would stand a chance. But he's got good ideas, and I agree with a lot of them, but I just don't think he wields any... He doesn't have any show of power in any way, shape or form, does he, really?
What, a lack of authority, Robert? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you think about him going up against, say, like a Trump or a Putin, it would be just mincemeat, wouldn't it?
Well,
let's be honest.
Most people struggle up against a Trump or a Putin.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, it would, you know what I mean? He'd be a quivering little wreck, wouldn't he?
Well, I don't know about that. He might even do his tie-up. You never know. So Robert, you know, he's got some good ideas, but he's not really doesn't cut the mustard as far as you're concerned. So, how will you vote?
This is going to annoy you, but I'm going to go with the Liberals.
Well, I wish there was a Liberal Party. They went a long time ago. Do you mean the Lib Dems?
That's the ones I went, yeah, so the Lib
That's
Dems,
right,
yeah.
the ones who are neither Liberal nor Democratic, but are probably going to do much better in this election. Robert, interesting you say that, because today's the day with Bob Marshall-Andrews. Bob Marshall-Andrews QC, you know, a really very well-known veteran Labour figure who held the Rochester and Stroud seat for them, I think in 2 or 3, I can't even remember, maybe even 3 general elections he won. And I remember appearing with him on Question Time and various other programmes, a very, very lively, entertaining, strong Labour character. And Bob Marshall-Andrews today defected to the Liberal Democrats. So you're another... I don't know whether they call you Bob, Robert, but there's a couple of Bobs.
I answer to both, don't worry.
You answer to both. So there's a couple of Bobs going in the Lib Dems direction, and you know, these current opinion polls put Labour on about 25%. One or two say 24%. A lot of the experts will tell you that this is the absolute rock bottom that Labour can ever sink to, and they're going to bounce from here over the next few weeks. And just looking at that total, I'm sorry, but shambles of a launch when it comes to Brexit, maybe some great stuff on other things, I think they could fall further still. And
There is something I'd like to ask you, Nigel.
Yeah, do.
If that's okay. It's about the whole 350 thing with LHS.
I never did that. I mean, don't blame me for that, mate. But...
No. I'm sorry, but it was you that was photographed in front of that bus.
I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
You were.
I wasn't.
Okay, then this
urban myth here. Anyway, go on. Ask the question.
The very next day on GMTV, when Susan Reid asked you about it, you said, that was a misunderstanding. You never come round and said that was nothing to do with you. You only said that after the fact. Do you know, sometimes, Robert, sometimes in life, things get stuck in people's minds that are not correct. You know, the famous urban myths. I never, ever, it was Boris that appeared with this 350 million a week. And do you know something? I'll tell you this. I had dinner with Michael Gove, a private dinner with Michael Gove during the campaign, and I said, that figure, Michael, is crackers. You know, may have been in private,
make it 200 million a week, and it would be credible. But this figure is too high, and I begged them to get rid of it, and they didn't. But please, you know, you can criticise me for all the things I've said and all the things I've done, but not the ones that I'm not directly responsible for.
Also, in the debates, again, before the Brexit vote, when the whole Project Fear did their thing, they were questioning you about it. Again, you weren't saying then that's nothing to do with you. You're changing your story. That's why.
No, I'm not changing my story, Robert, in Watford. I do many things, but I don't change my story. It's nothing to do with me. I'm going to get Boris in one night and get him to grovel and apologise to me and everybody. But, Robert, I thank you very much for your call. Labour voter there, going Lib Dem. Don't think he's on his own. Right now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Jeremy Corbyn has launched and some big, strong, anti-establishment stuff that is resonating with some, but on Brexit it was a shambles, and I've announced I'm not going to stand in this election because I think I can do a better job for Brexit leading a group in the European Parliament. Andrew on Facebook says to me, is it not possible to be an MP and an MEP? Can't you quantum leap between the two places at once? Andrew, no, it was, and I remember when I first got elected there, Ian Paisley, the late Ian Paisley, the Reverend, was an MEP, an MP and a member of the Stormers Assembly. But no, the rules are very clear. You can only be in one parliament at a time. Otherwise, I would not have an issue with this, and I would have put my name forward for the general election. But I am really fascinated whether you think that Corbyn can, over the course of the next few weeks, he obviously talked the talk today that he's going to surprise everybody. He had to say that. But is he going to provide credible opposition over the next few weeks? I just don't think he can. I really don't think he can. If you cannot articulate a simple message on a dominant issue of the campaign, then to me, what hope have you got? But maybe AO in Leicester is going to put me right.
Hello there, Nigel. Nice to speak to you.
Good evening.
I've got a question for you. So you capitalised on this anti-establishment sort of, view that a lot of people have in the UK, and then Brexit happened.
Yes.
You had Donald Trump in America who capitalised on a similar thing, and
that's true.
He won.
That's true.
And today you've got Jeremy Corbyn, who's, as you said many a time on your podcast, has a message that will resonate with quite a few people. In fact, a lot of people who probably voted for Brexit could empathise with what he said about being anti-establishment. So why can't he be or win in 7 weeks?
Well, that is a very, very good question, because I looked at the text of that speech and I sort of half saw it live, and do you know what? I had the same thought as you, that some of that rhetoric was similar to the Brexit campaign. It was similar to the Trump campaign, and somehow, coming from a North London intellectual socialist, it just doesn't seem to be somehow quite believable.
Why not? He's a man who stood up for working people, or for the people who are, the most disadvantaged, the least advantaged in society, for all of his political career. And now you have him coming up as leader of the Labour Party, coming out and saying, "Look, guys, I'm here for you." Why aren't people going to vote for him?
I do understand.
And sorry, let me cut you off again. I do apologise.
Go on,
I just want to get one thing.
Yeah.
One point I want to make is you are a fascinating human being. I watched your life stories with Piers Morgan.
Yeah,
that was and even though I probably disagree with 99% of what you say, I honestly kind of warmed to you. I have to be honest. But the way you went about Brexit, I mean, it's something to admire, even though I probably disagree with.
Well, I was out.
It's something to admire.
I was out to win, wasn't I? I was out to win.
You were for so many years, and you have, you have. Even though I'm completely against Brexit, I would say you have to admire that. Now you've got a guy who's been campaigning for 20, 30 years, similar to what you did.
Yeah.
Using a similar message that you have, or capitalising on people, on the same people that you did. Why can't he win?
Right. I thank you for your generous personal comments, and you're a true Democrat, because to actually have a half-grudging respect for someone you disagree with is what democracy actually should be about. And I have a half-grudging respect for Jeremy Corbyn in the sense that he's not your typical backstabbing career politician. He doesn't speak about people badly, when he's off camera. He doesn't do that. And I do think the anti-establishment stuff that he puts out, I think he believes it, and he's always believed it. I'm not sure that it quite resonates. But my problem, AO, and I've said this before tonight, but I'm going to say it again to you, my problem is, how can I take him as being utterly sincere when on this crucial issue of Brexit, when Corbyn, as one of the arch-Bennites, who ever since he first entered Parliament in 1983 has argued, and indeed John McDonnell is deputy too, they've both argued that EU membership destroyed British democracy and was bad for working people, and now they're part of the Remain camp, and they still appear to be there.
I think, as I would have to agree with that today, was really unclear. I think that'll be cleared up over the next few days anyway.
But hang on. It's only a 6-week campaign, and like it or not, this will be the dominant issue of the campaign. And to get off on the start they have today, frankly, is catastrophic.
No, I appreciate that, absolutely, but that'll be cleared up in the next few days. If he's got I read something today where it was like 7 or 8 of his different policies. I saw it on a Facebook post that he shared himself on his personal Facebook. And every single one of those policies, I think, will resonate with a lot or the majority of people in this country. And I want to put this to you now, if he clears up Brexit and says Brexit means Brexit, just like Theresa did, right? Will you back him in this election?
Well, I tell you what.
You've said this on your whole pod, on the whole, however long you've been on the radio today. You've said I agree with with morally, what he's saying. I agree with most of it, but just this one thing, Brexit was something.
Do you know what, Ayo? I tell you what I do. If he comes clean and says, look, I did back Remain in the referendum because otherwise I could not have stayed as leader of the Labour Party. I'm sorry, it was not the most honest decision of my life, but I'm now going to come clean. I think Brexit's a very good thing, and we in the Labour Party will harry the government and make sure that the British people get the best possible deal from it. Not only will my respect for Corbyn go up, but I will then say, Ayo, on this show, that actually he is a credible alternative to Theresa May in this general election. I thank you for your fascinating call. On Facebook, Justin says, Nigel, what exactly can you do more in the European Parliament? Please enlighten us. Thanks. I'm going to repeat this. We leave at the end of March. In May, there are European elections. All around me, there are MEPs saying we're going to punish Britain. Even if you negotiate a good deal, at the end of the 2 years, we are going to veto it. So what I want to do, and like it or not, Justin, I've got a very big profile with media across the entire European Union. In fact, I'm probably more than any other MEP out there in Brussels and Strasbourg. I want to go to Munich and give a speech. I want to go to Reims in France and give a speech. I want to go to Bruges in Belgium and give a speech. I want to make media. I want to say to people, don't vote for MEPs who will veto a sensible free trade deal with the United Kingdom because that will cost you jobs in your area. And I want to try and exert as much pressure on those MEPs and on the next European elections as I possibly can. And I think I'm the only person in a position, frankly, that could do that. Good evening, Nigel. Whoever mistakes your good self for Boris Johnson, re the 350 million a week, should go to Specsavers, says Gaynor in Hull. Thank you, Gaynor. The bus suggestion. Nigel was part of the Grassroots Out campaign. The bus was from Vote Leave, says Claire, and she's absolutely right. And I'm going to ask Kim in Newcastle. Kim, could Corbyn pose a threat in this election? Is he credible?
Yeah, he's definitely credible, and I think he is the underdog, which makes him favourable to some people.
Yes, I get that. And Brexit was the underdog, and Trump was the underdog, and underdogs can win sometimes, but when they're 23 points behind in the polls, goodness gracious me.
Well, you know what? You can't trust politicians nowadays, right?
I think a lot of people agree with that.
Yeah. So how can we evaluate how to judge these human beings? Maybe how they deal with the weak, the vulnerable in society? Do you not think that's a good argument?
Well, Kim, one argument is to evaluate how they deal with the weak. Another argument is to evaluate how much wealth they can create so we got the money to help support the weak. And these are all the great arguments. Kim, I'm going to have to let you go. I've run out of time. I apologise. There are loads of you that want to get involved in this debate tonight. My final thought is, whilst we're obsessing on the general election, on whether Corbyn looked like a bit of a dud today, on whether May is sincere, something else is going on across the channel. On this Sunday, the French presidential election will go through its first round. There are 4 candidates vying to get through for the runoff to the last 2. I will predict now that Marine Le Pen will get through to the final round. I don't know who she'll be against, whether it's the ex-Prime Minister Fillon, whether it's Macron, whether it's the outside left-winger Mélenchon, I don't know. But look at those French elections. They matter hugely, because when that second round comes on the 7th of May, if Le Pen was to win, then Brexit, frankly, was nothing. It'll be the end of the European project. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show.